Welcome to Movie Speeching. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take good care. Transporters is the name of the movie. Please like and subscribe to get everyday updates. In a little American rustic town, David lives with his injurious father William, but without his mother, who cleared out them when he was 5. At school, David likes to hang out with his pulverized Millie, a young lady who dreams of traveling around the world. David knows around this dream, and one day, he endowments Millie the snow globe with the Eiffel Tower in it. Millie adores it, but the sweet minute is hindered by Stamp, who prods David for being a dork and tosses the snow globe within the center of a solidified lake. David is decided to recover it, but when he strolls on the ice, it's not thick sufficient to resist his weight and it breaks. The solidified water takes the boy, and it makes him freeze to the point where he abruptly vanishes from the lake, as it were to seem once more interior a library. Confounded and frightened, David chooses to disregard what fair happened and go domestic. William promptly starts hollering at David for being late, so David stows away in his room, locking the entryway. Angry, William starts pushing the entryway, and when he's approximately to burst in, David vanishes and appears up at the library once more. At long last tolerating he has superpowers, David returns domestic, snatches his investment funds, and get away and arrange to begin a modern life. To begin with, in spite of the fact that he stops by Millie's house to take off the snow globe so she knows he's lively and well. Another, David moves to the city, rents a soiled room at a motel, and starts testing his powers. The primary few times he closes up slamming against a tree, but in the long run he gets the hang out of it by looking at pictures of the places he wants to go to. His to begin with visit is to the Rome State Building, where David has affectionate recollections of his mother Mary. When he feels prepared, David visits a bank to urge an idea of what it looks like interior, and within the evening he teleports interior the vault to take all the money. Whereas David celebrates in his small room, the bank finds the burglary and Roland appears up imagining to be NSA. He has involvement with cases like this and knows of the existence of jumpers. In fact, he's beyond any doubt one of them did this. A long time afterward, David is living the finest life. He incorporates a sumptuous penthouse loft in an used York filled with costly objects and such great control of his powers that he employments them fair to reach the kitchen. His dividers are full of pictures of points of interest that permit him to effectively teleport any place within the world to spend the day, like having an excursion on beat of the Sphinx. One evening, he shows up in London and enters a bar. Here he teleports to the bar to choose up a young lady. This carelessness is taken note by Griffin, but David can't tell and just leaves with the young lady. Meanwhile, a jumper teleports within the center of a tropical wilderness, as it were to induce caught in a net of wires that keep tossing him and stop him from teleporting once more. This trap was set up by Roland and his men. They call themselves the Paladins and chase down jumpers because they think they're an cursed thing. Roland slaughters the boy with no faltering. At that point, he gets a call around their following lead. Minutes afterward, David returns to his loft and finds Roland there, who has brought all the notes David has left in bank vaults through a long time. David tries to kick him out, but Roland reacts by hitting him with an extraordinary twirly-do that stuns him with 1,000 volts of power that do not let David teleport encouraged than a couple of feet interior the loft. A battle results, and after parts of battling, David oversees to teleport interior a covered-up room in his divider, cutting the mallet cable. Roland takes after the cable and starts breaking down the divider, but David Fair gets a bunch of cash and teleports absent. Not giving up, Roland looks at the pictures and sends his men to all of David's regular jump sites. He too looks at David's stuff and finds an ancient picture of Millie. Seconds afterward, David shows up in his ancient room. William hears a clamor from first floor and surges to undertake to meet with his child, saying he feels like he's insane, which David is welcome anytime. David, as it were, assures William that he isn't insane, sometime recently vanishing once more. The following morning, David considers going by William for great, but he can't bring himself to conversation to him. Instead, he goes to Millie's house, and Millie's mother is so stunned to memorize David is lively that she embraces him. She advises David that Millie is working at the neighborhood bar, and David heads there, as it were to feel like a defeatist once more as before long as he sees more seasoned Millie. David tries to take off without being noticed and bumps into more seasoned Stamp, who instantly recognizes him and starts inquiring questions. His outburst is caught by Millie, who uncovers she saw David when he arrived and was holding up for him to say something. This makes Mark desirous, and he tries to form a move on Millie, causing David to punch him for it. This triggers a battle that closes up outside, giving David the chance to push Stamp through a fence and teleport him away, whereas no one is observing. They show up interior the bank vault David ransacked, and David threatens Mark with more awful. Sometime recently he jumps absent, taking off Mark within the vault as punishment. Afterward, David returns to the bar and at last encompasses a chat with Millie, who dropped her dreams of traveling since she had to confront the reality of having a work. David tells her he works in managing an account and welcomes her to come to Rome with him, which Millie obviously accepts. All this is caught by Griffin, who by one means or another is within the bar as well. In the meantime, Roland arrives at the police station imagining to be CIA and punches the analyst when he isn't accepted. At that point he examines Check, promising he does accept the crazy story about teleportation. Calm to a found-in partner, Stamp tells Roland everything, almost David and Millie. Roland quickly calls his men to send them to Italy. Some hours hours afterward, David and Millie arrive in Rome and check in at a really lavish inn. Millie begins getting suspicious of David's genuine work, but he swears he isn't lying. The two of them end up getting spirited for whereas before they at long last take off the lodging and appreciate the magnificence of Rome while Griffin watches them from afar. Inevitably, David and Millie try to enter the Colosseum, but it's already closed for the day. While Millie is distracted, David teleports inside to get a side entryway open and imagines he found it like that. The couple meanders around and appreciates the history behind these seas, with David pulling the same trap at whatever point they discover a bolted door. When he tries to pick up get to the lower area, he bumps into Griffin, relieving himself on a pillar. David tries to disregard him, but Griffin all of a sudden teleports before him and uncovers there are jumpers all over the world. Griffin reproves David for bringing a not jumper into this and carelessly jumping around because he picked up the consideration of the off-base individuals. At that minute, the paladins enter the Colosseum and begin chasing the boys. David is quickly stunned with a twirly-do and he can't move, but Griffin has more experience with these guys' tricks. He teleports away in seconds and rapidly thumps them out one by one. At that point, he tells David approximately the paladin organization sometime recently vanishing. All of a sudden, a worker from the Colosseum appears up screaming for offer assistance, so David bounced into the jump scar cleared out by Griffin's teleportation, permitting him to discover his secret hideout in the desert. Furious, Griffin reminds him he left Millie alone and David immediately hops back to drag Millie out of the building. Unfortunately, the police are waiting outside and capture them both. 8 hours afterward, the cops are still attempting to examine David, in spite of the fact that they can't make a formal capture until the officer from the U.S. government office arrives. This magistrate turns out to be Mary, who liberates David from his handcuffs and tells him to run before more paladins come. David tries to go after her to request a clarification, but a cop gets in his way, so David teleports him to Egypt as discipline. At that point, David returns to the station and tells Millie the cops let them go similar to that. Millie doesn't accept it can be this simple, but David inquires her to believe him and takes her to the air terminal. Not understanding why they're running in case things are as far as anyone knows fine, Millie demands an clarification. David appears her all the cash in his sack, but doesn't grant her any answers. He as it were tells her they can't be together any longer. Feeling sold out, Millie flies back to her hometown alone. In the interim, Roland's group calls him to educate him they were vanquished, nearly as in case somebody knew they were coming. At that point, Roland visits William, who imagines he hasn't seen his child in a long time. William too concedes that indeed in case he does see David, he won't tell the police, which Roland doesn't appreciate. Minutes afterward, David appears up at Griffin's alcove and finds out that Griffin chases down paladins to slaughter them. It turns out paladins have been doing this for centuries, and they're capable for things just like the witch trials and the investigation. Griffin focuses out that on the off chance that they can't get a jumper, they'll assault their adored ones, making David stressed. Millie is secure for presently since she's on a long flight, so David teleports to his ancient domestic and is crushed to discover William dead on the floor. Despondency doesn't permit David to think straight and he teleports William to the healing center, but there's nothing the specialists can do to spare him. Angry, David goes to the police station and threatens Mark until he concedes he was the one that told Roland everything approximately their hometown, counting David's sentiments for Millie. David realizes he must capture Roland sometime recently Millie lands within the U.S., so he teleports to Griffin's safe house to undertake to take his paladin investigate. Griffin doesn't let him, clarifying that not at all like the cohorts, Roland is as well perilous. This makes David think they ought to group up to vanquish him, but Griffin turns him down, saying he leaned towards to work alone. At that point, Griffin teleports to Tokyo and David takes after him to keep bothering him, almost joining up. Griffin leaned towards to take a scar to have a few fun and brings David along, appearing him how he can make the car bounce along on the street. David never hopped with something this huge, and Griffin confesses he once knew a fellow that attempted to teleport an entirety building but kicked the bucket within the handle. After David inquires for the millionth time, Griffin acknowledges to group up as long as David doesn't contact him ever once more. A short time later, the two of them teleport to the air terminal, but it's as well late. Millie is have now landed and cleared out. David goes to the bar to ask for her, and a server tells him Roland's been around inquiring for Millie as well. Another David teleports to Millie's loft and is calm to find she's fine. Millie doesn't want to see him, but David can listen to Paladin's drawing nearer, so he begins confessing everything, teleporting to seize the snow globe on the racks to demonstrate it to her. This scares Millie and she tries to run away, hence David has no choice but to seize her and take her to Griffin's alcove. This makes Griffin angry since he knows the Paladins have a machine that permits them to open wormholes on the scar cleared out by the jumps. Meanwhile, Roland and his men arrive at Millie's flat and do precisely as Griffin dreaded. Whereas holding up for the wormhole to open, the boys stow away, and David finds that Griffin's investigate incorporates his possessed mother since Mary may be a paladin as well. At that minute, Roland arrives and captures David with his electrical wires. When he's approximately to slaughter him, Griffin cuts in with a flamethrower and starts battling Roland. To counter Roland's utilize of technology, Griffin teleports to the city to seize a transport and bring it back, making it drop on Roland. Tragically, Roland is fine, so Griffin employments the flamethrower once more to thrust him back into the wormhole, then he takes after him to proceed battling him at Millie's loft. In the interim, Millie cuts the wires to spare David and makes him guarantee he'll take off her alone after taking her domestic. David acknowledges, but moreover confesses she's been his as it were cherished since they were kids. The sweet minute is hindered by Griffin, who comes back with the Paladin's machine, considering they won't be taken after any longer. Be that as it may, Roland employments the bounce scar Griffin cleared out to dispatch a hook that captures Millie Millie and brings her to the apartment right sometime recently the scar closes. David needs to go to spare Millie, but Griffin starts planning a bomb to require it to the flat and slaughter all the paladins once and for all, not caring if Millie also dies within the prepare. Unwilling to lose Millie, David snatches the bomb and drops it at the Coliseum. Griffin promptly takes after him and the two of them begin battling over the detonator as they teleport all over the world. Eventually they make it to the best of the Domain State building, so David throws the detonator absent and they have to be hop after it. An unused arrangement of jumps begin, and Griffin teleports a truck to hit David when they make it to a Chechen war zone. Disregarding the war around them, Griffin recovers the detonator, but at that minute David hops on him and pushes him against the arch with enough current to keep Griffin caught for a whereas. A short time later David teleports back to Millie's flat and finds her tied to the divider. As before long as he tries to protect her, Roland assaults him with the baton and captures him as well. At that point Roland gets ready to slaughter him, but Millie apologizes for misinterpreting everything, and this gives David the back he needs to take his powers to the another level. Suddenly, the entirety room vanishes from the building and is teleported to the center of the Huron stream. David is feeling dizzy underwater, so Millie swims to him to ground him, making a difference him teleport once more into the ancient library. After Millie wakes David up with a slap, David takes note Roland is still around. He teleports Millie to a secure spot sometime recently bouncing on Roland to require him to unseparated cave within the middle of the amazing canyon. Sometime recently taking off, David focuses out that he's a great individual since he could have cleared out Roland with the sharks, however he didn't. Many days afterward, David takes after a few clues approximately his mother to a house in a snowy region. He finds Mary encompasses a modern life with a girl here, and Mary concedes she cleared out him because she knew approximately his powers. Mary denies to take off her work as a paladin and hugs him, clarifying that she does adore David but the as it were thing she can offer could be a head begin. David leaves as he acknowledges his mother is the foe and meets with Millie, who takes off with him to a hotter put. Thank you for watching. See you on the next video.